If you don't live under a rock, you should know about the situation currently ongoing in Ukraine. And although we're brothers, it is quite evident that we share many differences. For example, you like chocolate ice cream, while I enjoy a nice cup of vanilla ice cream. You spend your time reading up on obscure historical events, while I like to play basketball. However, one area of disconnect we share is politics, and today I am here to change your opinion on the largest ongoing geopolitical issue, the war in Ukraine, and more specifically, how much should the US aid Ukraine? Before I begin, I'd like to share the statistics, facts, and details about the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. Officially coined as the Russo-Ukrainian War, the war is a conflict between Russia and Ukraine that is still continuing. It first began in February 2014 following the Ukrainian Revolution of Dignity and initially centered around the status of Crimea and Donbas, both of which are internationally recognized as part of Ukraine. The Russian annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbas between Ukraine and Russian-backed rebels, as well as naval events, cyber warfare, and political tensions, characterized the first 8 years of the conflict. Following a Russian military buildup on the Russia-Ukraine border beginning in the late 2021, Russia finally launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. And here we are today, over 4 months into the conflict, with thousands dead on both sides. Now, how did the United States of America become involved in a conflict that's taking place thousands of miles away from our border? Well, the war itself has a lot of geopolitical consequences riding on it. The war itself began originally after President Zelensky pushed for efforts hoping to join NATO, also known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO is a military alliance of 30 member countries, including 28 European countries, the United States, and Canada, all legally binded to protect each other. Fearing the westernization of a state they share borders with, Russia saw their efforts as a threat against their national security. According to BBC.com, the Russian leader's initial aim was to overrun Ukraine and dispose of its government, ending for good its desire to join the Western Defensive Alliance NATO. After a month of failures, he's abandoned its bid to capture the capital city of Kiev and turned his ambitions to Ukraine's east and south, launching the invasion on the 24th of February. He told Russian people his goal was to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. His declared aim was to protect people subject to what he called was 8 years of bullying and genocide by Ukrainian government. Another objective was soon added, ensuring Ukraine's neutral status. Now, what would the consequences be for the United States and their allies if Russia successfully captures Ukraine? Well, to begin with, the US would lose a possible key ally and overall strength in Eurasia. Losing Ukraine would only strengthen Russia's geopolitics. They would gain control of Ukraine and its wealth. Ukraine possesses a wealth of complementary natural resources in the high concentrations at near proximity: coal, iron ore, natural gas, manganese, salt, oil, graphite, sulfur, kaolin, titanium, nickel, magnesium, wood, and mercury are all plentiful in the nation. In addition, losing Ukraine would be a blow to NATO. What is considered the greatest peace force in the globe would diminish in prestige as opposing countries, such as China, will come to question if they themselves could push their military ambitions. In general, the war in Ukraine has a lot riding on it. Before I begin, Daniel, the topic is very sensitive to many, and my argument here today isn't to say that we should not help Ukraine. Rather, we should properly assess whether or not taxpayer money is being used as efficiently as it could be. As it is quite clear to both of us, the government often comes short when it comes to financial coherence. The US so far has funded more than $40 billion towards the war in Ukraine, an insurmountable amount. To begin to understand just how much of this foreign aid funding could help the United States, let's look at some of the problems we are facing here domestically. From college loans, rising gas prices, and in general, rising brisk inflation, Americans need money immediately. By simply putting together a bloated, unreasonable, and promptly put together aid package, American leadership is failing us as citizens. For example, while the measure includes a significant investment in strengthening Ukraine's defenses, it also allows about $1 billion in illegal immigration and over $9 billion for items like supporting Ukrainian government officials' wages and pensions. If we sincerely want to assist Ukraine in overcoming its current problems, and we should, our reaction should be centered on that goal, rather than on helping pay the retirement costs of foreign officials. Why do I, as an American taxpayer, care about a foreign official's salary? In addition, the budget itself was voted for in only a few hours, which should immediately raise many questions. I understand that you strongly support financial aid for Ukraine, but I propose the solution. Why not tap into the existing $776 billion military budget for this fiscal year? This would leave about 97.4% of our Pentagon's budget undisturbed, despite the fact that the US military is not fighting any other battles anywhere on the earth. It is very frustrating enough that an insane amount of money is about to be spent dealing with the Ukraine situation at a time when Congress is unable to find a way to spend roughly the same amount on an annual basis to deal with a devastating and potentially irreversible change in global climate. Additionally, Daniel, almost every component of the failed Build Back Better agenda, such as universal child care and pre-K, higher ACA subsidies, elder care increases, housing improvements, and so on, something you showed clear support for, is less expensive on an annual basis than the expenses of this fight. Furthermore, the alleged rationale cited for not proceeding with such long-term investments is that we cannot risk increased inflation. Inflation is called anytime someone wants to ensure that someone is educated or receives the necessary health care, but never when the fiscal money is directed directly into the gaping jaws of military contractors. And with the current state of the economy, with inflation reaching new heights and gas prices soaring through the roof, we simply don't have $40 billion lying around to use for domestic needs, let alone an entirely different country. Daniel, you are a very rational human being, and I'm sure you're following on to the many points I am making. Okay, fine. Let us agree on the fact that the money is required for Ukrainian victory. The money has been sent, the equipment has been offered. Ukraine is now armed with the best weaponry on the planet. Surely they cannot lose. Well, not really. According to the Modern War Institute at West Point, which focuses on observing and analyzing modern conflicts, the equipment sent to Ukraine really isn't that effective. Sure, it's expensive, shiny, and explosive, but why send a $10 million missile when something that costs just $2 million is just as effective? The Modern War Institute at West Point highlights the Turkish Bayraktar TB2, for example. MWI presents a very compelling argument. By contrast, the much vaunted Javelin and NLAW, both man-portable anti-tank guided missiles, belong to a previous era. They require an operator to ambush armored vehicles within the adversary's weapons engagement zone. Their high success rate here in Ukraine owes everything to the design defects in Soviet-era armor. The Russian BRDM armored reconnaissance vehicles are made of aluminum alloy, which burn incandescently after contact with a high explosive round. And the manufacturers of the T-72 tank overlooked one fatal design defect. The tank's ammunition is stored right below the crew spaces without a hardened bulkhead for insulation. Even a rocket-propelled grenade fired from the flank will result in a catastrophic kill more often than not. Both these flaws are a result in part of the corruption and incompetence endemic throughout the Russian military procurement system and have proven to be a great benefit for the defenders of Ukraine. So why would we need to send Javelin missiles, which cost millions of dollars, instead of, another weapon system that might cost a fraction of it? The website then continues to explore why the US won't build and export cheaper, more blue-collar weaponry. The US and the Pentagon simply don't feel compelled and required to build lower-cost drones. According to the facts provided, the US has armed Ukraine with obsolete and overly expensive technology. Daniel, the US has given a student driver a Lamborghini to take their driver's test in. A Toyota would be a much better fit in that situation, even if it's far less glorious. As MWI says, instead, the United States is throwing money at the problems in the hope that sheer expenditure will bring results. It is a mistake to conflate expenditure and resources with targeted capability. Military aid should be focused on actual requirements, and it is here where US policy breaks down. So Daniel, no matter how you see it, America has wasted a great deal on the war in Ukraine. Rather than relocating the emergency funding for use such as healthcare, universal pre-K, pensions, etc., the leadership in this country has decided that the health of another country is far more important. And again, to make myself more clear, I am not knocking down Ukraine. They have every right to defend themselves, and I wish they can definitely defeat Russian oppression. But the way our leadership has decided to allocate the funds is just outright disrespectful to us Americans. Our leadership has put together an incompetent and overweight bill together without much thought. Careful consideration and planning would have saved American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars and would have ensured more efficient weapons and a more efficient victory overall for Ukraine.